After days of avalanches and retreat, Nanga Parbat finally fell silent. One climber stepped into the calm, alone, exhausted, and running out of time, toward a summit that demanded everything and offered no promise of return.
Hey, glad you're here. Welcome to the Himalayan Journals. Here on this channel, we bring to you real stories from century old field notes. We try to keep it simple and calm here. Think of it as a documented history of the Himalayas from the early 1900s, covering stories of indigenous wisdom, epic expeditions, and groundbreaking science passed on just as they were recorded. Subscribe, zone out, binge.
The weather was wonderful at last. For the first time in many days, the mountains stood clear and calm, and it seemed possible that the spell might hold. Only 2 days earlier, the party had been forced to struggle down from Camp 4 through chest-deep snow, threatened by avalanches, abandoning equipment, and even sleeping bags. The situation then had appeared hopeless. After a day's rest at Camp 3, spirits rose again. On the morning of the 1st of July 1953, Hans Ertl took the initiative. With 4 remaining Sherpas, the climbers went back up to Camp 4 through deep, exhausting snow. Otto Kempter stayed behind at Camp 3 to recover from exhaustion and planned to join later. When they reached Camp 4, the camp was almost completely buried, only the ridges of the tents showing. Hours were spent sounding for the tents and digging them free. Walter Frauenberger prepared the loads for the next day, while Ertl and Hermann Buhl carried 100 meters of rope upward to prepare the steep Rakiot Face. They cut steps, fixed ropes, traversed beneath the Rakiot Peak, and returned late to Camp 4, exhausted and uneasy about what lay ahead. On the 2nd of July, Hans served breakfast early. The porters complained of headaches, but soon recovered. Otto and Matty joined just before departure. 1 tent, stores, fuel, and 2 sleeping bags were taken. Buhl led the way, improving the previous day's steps, but already felt weakened. The porters moved confidently across the slopes. By late afternoon, they reached the moor's head and rested in deep snow. The porters refused to go farther. As evening fell, Buhl and Otto pitched their tent at about 6,900 meters. Above them, the ridge rose toward the Silver Saddle, and beyond it, the distant summit of Nanga Parbat. The distance and height still to be covered made clear that more than 1 day would be required. That night, the wind shook the tent violently, and Buhl slept little. At 2:30 a.m. on 3rd July, Buhl left alone under bright moonlight. Otto remained behind, intending to follow later. The ridge was hard from the wind, and progress was steady at first. Cornices crowned the ridge, ice plunged to the right, and sheer darkness fell away to the left. By 5 o'clock, the dawn revealed the Karakoram and distant peaks such as K2, Masherbrum, Rakaposhi, and the Mustag Tower. Encouraged by good weather, Buhl continued toward the Silver Saddle. Distance proved deceptive. The Silberzacken was reached only after 2 hours. At roughly 7,400 meters, Buhl rested again and began the long crossing of the glacier below the secondary summit. Furrows carved by storms slowed progress terribly. Heat and airlessness drained his strength. Otto was visible far behind and carried the butter and meat, leaving Buhl with only dried fruit and nougat. By midday, his plan to reach the summit had already failed. Reaching rock at last, Buhl left his rucksack behind. He kept only essential items and traversed toward the Diamir Gap. At 3 o'clock, he reached the gap, with 300 meters still to climb. The ridge ahead was narrow, corniced, and exposed. Struggling badly, he finally took Pervitine. Smooth rock, softened snow, and the immense south face lay beneath him. Near the shoulder, a difficult gendarme forced a draining traverse. At 6 o'clock, he reached the snowfield below the summit. At 7 in the evening, Boole stood on the summit of Nanga Parbat. He felt no triumph, only relief. He took photographs, unfolded a Tyrolese flag and a Pakistani flag, and looked down into the Rupel Valley as the sun disappeared and cold closed in. He descended at once. A broken crampon forced him to bivouac at about 8,000 meters, alone and without equipment. The night was calm but bitterly cold. On the 4th of July at dawn, frozen and weakened, he began descending again. Hallucinations followed. Voices called his name. Rocks became companions. At midday, he reached the Daimir Gap and pushed on through exhaustion. At 5:30 p.m., he reached the Silver Saddle. Near the Moor's Head, 2 men appeared. They believed him dead. That night, they tended his frost-bitten foot. When Boole looked back the next morning, the mountain already felt like a dream that had flickered into life for one brief, impossible moment.